I'm saying it feels like in the context of the full statement, it's a little bit unclear in the context of not
the United
having
States
anything
knew
to do
nothing is
specifically.
unclear to you?
No, I think it has to do with.
Are you trying to say, Jason, that you don't think that that's true? Because there's a difference between what he wrote and what you think is true.
This isn't just a TV debate. It's a test of how truth holds up under pressure. If you believe in progress and accountability, hit subscribe. Let's build a stronger voice for democracy. You've got Ana Navarro stepping into a space where narratives don't just compete. They get reshaped in real time. Here's what that really exposes. It's not just disagreement. It's accountability versus spin. Because in a functioning democracy, debate should clarify truth, not blur it. So the real question is, are we watching honesty or performance?
Together.
Breaking news tonight, the president is warning Iran against any more retaliatory strikes after an Israeli strike against a gas site. Now, before I read this Truth Social post, some context. Iran fired missiles at Qatar after a major gas field in Iran was struck by the Israelis. Here's what he wrote. Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly attacked a portion of Qatar's liquid natural gas facility. No more attacks will be made by Israel, the president says, pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. I do not want to authorize this level of violence and destruction because of the long-term implications that it will have on the future of Iran. But if Qatar's LNG is attacked again, I will not hesitate to do so. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, Bobby, just to take a step back, this attack on Qatar's liquid natural gas field was a massive thing that happened today, and it's going to have long-standing implications for the price of gas. And what do you make of Trump essentially warning Iran, and maybe having a message to Israel too about the appropriateness of this kind of attack, but warning Iran not to retaliate like this again?
So he's doing two things there. One, he's saying that we were not involved. The U.S. didn't know that this field was going to be attacked by the Israelis. And he's saying that if the Iranians now overreact to it, the way he's characterizing overreacting by attacking Qatar, then the U.S. will go in and complete the job that the Israelis didn't do. Now, earlier today, the administration did issue a statement saying that whereas the United States was not involved in the Israeli attacks, it was kept informed. Now the president seems to be saying it was not even informed. So that's different from what his administration was saying earlier. But this is not a threat this is not a warning to Israel. It's clearly a warning to Iran. What he's saying to Iran is that if you attack Qatar, and Qatar is one of the world's largest exporters of LNG, and it's LNG is a gas that has to be liquefied before it can be exported. Because Hormuz is closed, the liquefaction factories have all been shut down because they're not able to export. That has enormous consequences for the price of LNG around the world. So the president is saying, you attack Qatar's facilities again, and we come after you with everything we've got. So the threat is very much directed at Tehran.
This is what I think people worry about with a war like this, which is that, there are objectives as it relates to Iran, but the escalation is happening around infrastructure, around energy, around water. And you're already seeing France, as a result of what happened today with Qatar, basically saying, we need to put a stop to energy attacks and to civilian infrastructure attacks, specifically water treatment plants, right? And the fact that Israel did that, knowing that it would cause an escalation, seems to me to be a problem in this particular moment.
It reminds me of when my kids are fighting in the other room and I have to go in and play referee. We're trying to play referee from 8 hours away, and it's really, really difficult and tricky and dangerous. These are skirmishes between important ones and big ones. But boy, this is tough to play referee from half a world away.
I don't think we're playing referee. I think we are supposed to be, and I've been told that we are in lockstep with Israel, right? That we acted. In fact, Marco Rubio said that we acted because we knew Israel was going to attack, and we acted preemptively so that Iran's backlash was well, yeah. But I'm having a very hard time believing, and if it's true, it's even worse than we think, that Israel would take an action like this without telling the United States, informing the United States, and letting them know of what the consequences is. If that's what Israel is doing, then we have a bigger problem because they're out of control.
How do we explain? But that's a good question. I mean, how do we explain Israel taking this stuff is clearly escalatory? It's to the point where the president now has to say, stop the escalation. So if he didn't want that to happen in the first place, how does it happen if we are the ones in the Israel-United States relationship holding the cards?
So I didn't read the statement as the president feeling like we weren't told. I didn't get that from this particular
He
statement.
says it in a statement. It's in the first line.
He's saying two somewhat different things.
Let me just say, for the purpose of clarity, I'll just read.
Let's pause here, because this is where the conversation shifts from what was said to how it gets explained away. Here's what that really exposes. When a statement is clear on its face, but suddenly needs layers of reinterpretation to defend it, you're no longer dealing with clarity. You're dealing with damage control. And we've seen this pattern before. A direct statement is made, then the conversation moves into, that's not what he meant, or you're taking it out of context. At some point, the explanation becomes more complicated than the original claim. That's a red flag. Listen closely. This is the tell. When supporters have to stretch language to make something acceptable, it suggests the original message didn't land in a defensible way. That's not just rhetoric. That's a psychological reflex to protect a belief. Now here's the deeper layer. This isn't just about defending a statement. It's about defending identity. Because once people attach their political identity to a leader, disagreement starts to feel like a personal attack. And that's where logic often takes a back seat. That's a classic contradiction. On one hand, people demand accountability and truth. On the other hand, when a leader they support says something questionable, the standard suddenly changes. And this is where democracy gets tested. Because a healthy system depends on one simple principle, that truth matters more than loyalty. Now look at the second part of what's being said here. There's a concern about escalation, about power, and about how actions between nations can spiral. And that's not something to brush off. Because in moments like this, the stakes aren't abstract. They're global. They affect markets, security, and ultimately human lives. And that's the moral frame we can't ignore. Leadership at this level isn't just about strong words. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding that every statement carries weight, and every action has consequences that extend far beyond borders. So the question becomes simple but uncomfortable. Are we evaluating leadership based on facts or based on alignment? Because those two things don't always point in the same direction.
The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. That's the part that I think Bobby was referring to.
And I'm not saying that it's false. I'm saying it feels like in the context of the full statement, it's a little bit unclear in the context of not
the United
having
States
anything
knew
to do
nothing is
specifically.
unclear to you?
No, I think it has to do with.
Are you trying to say, Jason, that you don't think that that's true? Because there's a difference between what he wrote and what you think is true. I mean, do you think that
It's a little bit of both. I'm simply
misleading?
saying I think what the context means is that we didn't have anything to do specifically with it, didn't provide any intel on it. But I don't believe that they didn't know about what Israel was doing.
Do you think that if we thought it was a bad idea, that we would simply allow Israel to do it?
Well, I guess I don't look at this as
that's the question that I have.
Yeah,
I think that's relevant.
I don't know if it's fair to say that we would have total control over how Israel responds to a different threat from Iran, as clearly doesn't want Israel to exist, has been key in funding terrorist proxy groups that also do not want Israel to exist. They have somewhat different goals than we do. There's going to be mostly alignment here, but not always. And so sometimes Israel is going to act within their own self-interest the same way we would.
Without telling the United States?
I don't think they did tell the United States.
Right, so then,
I agree with you.
So then that first line is not true from our president, which is the problem. Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, he wrote it. I didn't
I
write
think
it.
it's a little contradictory.
We have no idea, right? Let's be
Well, that's part of the problem.
Well,
You're
then
right.
we're
deciphering the social
That's
media
actually, that is the point. We don't have any idea, which is half of the issue right now. My question is, to the point I made earlier, what is the end game? Is it that we do not want Iran to have nukes? And do we feel like at this point they do not have nukes? And if we do, then what is our plan to de-escalate this so that there is not utter destruction of things that will have massive implications for years to the citizens of America that may never even go to the Middle East or have to be the boots on the ground if there never is? That is a thing we really need to get clear on, because what it feels like is that if we are, to your point earlier, I don't think Iran will stop fighting as long as we want to fight. Like that's what people, when you're in a fight, when you play a game, the referee doesn't stop the clock completely. We wait till it goes 0-0-0. Iran will run the clock out here. And if they do,
Well, they
does
have
that
limited
mean...
ability
And
to
they
do that,
warned.
though.
But what destruction happens until the clock goes
They
to
warned
zero?
from the beginning that they
People also thought Ukraine had limited ability to fight back against Russia, and it's been going on for how many years now? Of course, they've gotten a lot of help from the United States, but still, there was talk of that war was just going to be over in days, and it's still going on.
would retaliate in exactly this way if their energy infrastructure was attacked. So this is a known. We have known from the beginning, because of what they have said, that they would do this. So I'm just curious, Bobby. I mean, what is the Israeli rationale for kicking us up the escalation ladder in this particular way?
Well, we have not heard the Israeli explanation for why they made. We'll presumably, now that Trump has put it out there, we'll hear an explanation tomorrow from the Israelis. The Israelis, I suspect what they'll say is that the escalation is coming from the Iranian side. They have launched multiple missiles at Israel. Some Israeli civilians have been killed. Foreign workers working in Israel have been killed. Actually, Palestinians have been killed. Some of those missiles have landed in the West Bank. So people are being killed in Israel, and therefore Israel feels that it needs that what it has done so far clearly was not enough to stop the Israelis and Iranians, and therefore they need to escalate. I suspect that some variation of what I've just said will be the Israeli explanation. But as we all seem to agree here, I don't believe for a moment that the Israelis did this, attack that gas field, with the United States not knowing about it. That just seems so outrageous.
But the Iranians aren't going to stop. When does the clock run out is my question.
Exactly.
This is a statement to appease Qatar.
Next for us, the White House uses a new phrase to describe the economic.
Here's what really stands out in this moment. It's not just a debate about policy, it's a debate about priorities and who those priorities actually serve. You hear Ashley Allison raising a concern that goes beyond any single administration. It's the idea that everyday Americans are being asked to support decisions, financially and otherwise, that may not directly reflect their lived reality. And that's not a fringe concern, that's a democratic one. Here's what that really exposes. When people are told there's no money for healthcare, infrastructure, or long-term domestic investment, yet large-scale defense spending continues to expand, it creates a visible contradiction. And contradictions like that don't stay hidden. They shape public trust. Listen closely. This is the tell. It's not just about numbers on a budget. It's about how those numbers are justified, explained, and prioritized. When priorities consistently lean toward one direction while being constrained in another, people start asking a simple question. Why? And that question matters. Because in a democracy, the public isn't just expected to accept outcomes. They're expected to understand them. Now, there's a deeper layer here. The way statements are being interpreted, whether taken literally or reframed through context, reveals something important about how political narratives are constructed. Because if a statement can mean one thing in the moment, and something else entirely depending on interpretation, then accountability becomes harder to pin down. And when accountability becomes fluid, trust starts to weaken. That's a key contradiction. On one hand, there's a demand for directness. Take him at his word. On the other hand, there's a defense mechanism. That's not what he meant. Both approaches can exist, but when they're applied inconsistently, it creates confusion instead of clarity. And this is where democracy meets perception, because public understanding depends on clarity. If clarity is replaced with constant reinterpretation, then citizens are no longer evaluating facts. They're evaluating narratives. Now step back and look at the bigger picture. What's being discussed here isn't just foreign policy, it's impact. Decisions made at the highest levels don't stay isolated. They ripple outward into economies, into alliances, and into the daily lives of people who may never directly engage with the conflict itself. That's a structural truth of governance. Power carries consequences beyond borders. And that's exactly why transparency matters so much, because people are being asked to trust decisions that extend far beyond what they can see firsthand. Here's the psychological layer. When people feel that their concerns are being dismissed, or that priorities are consistently out of alignment with their needs, it creates a sense of distance from the system itself. that distance isn't just emotional, it's political. And over time, that can erode engagement. People stop asking questions not because they're satisfied, but because they feel unheard. So the real question here isn't just who made the better argument. It's whether the system is operating in a way that reflects the values it claims to uphold. Because when trust breaks down between leaders, institutions, and the public, it doesn't just create disagreement. It creates disconnection. And disconnection is where accountability begins to weaken. And here's the grounding point. Democracy isn't just about elections or debates. It's about alignment between what is said, what is done, and what is experienced by the people living under those decisions. When those three things line up, trust strengthens. When they don't, tension grows. And that's why moments like this matter. Not because of who's on the panel, but because of what the conversation reveals about how power, responsibility, and public trust are being handled. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about policy. It's about whether decisions can be understood, questioned, and trusted by the people they affect.